An ordinary day at a busy store took a shocking turn when a rude seller lashed out at an elderly black woman. The humiliation seemed unbearable until one truth turned the entire scene upside down. Because what this seller didn't know, the very woman she disrespected wasn't just another customer. She was the rightful owner of the store. What followed left everyone stunned and taught a lesson no one would ever forget. If you were in that elderly woman's place, disrespected in public by someone who didn't know who you really were, what would you do? Would you walk away quietly, or would you reveal the truth right then and there? Share your answer in the comments, because your choice might just surprise you. Don't miss powerful stories like this that reveal the truth behind respect, dignity, and courage. Make sure to subscribe to Rise Against Odds and press the bell icon so you never miss an inspiring video that might change the way you see the world. It was a bright morning in a busy downtown neighborhood. The local convenience store bustled with activity, people grabbing groceries, workers rushing in for snacks, and kids stopping by for drinks after school. Behind the counter stood Lisa, a young seller with an impatient attitude. She had worked there for only a few months, but her arrogance made customers uneasy. That day, an elderly black woman named Mrs. Evelyn slowly walked into the store. She wore a neat floral dress, her hair pulled back with care, and she carried herself with quiet dignity. Despite her age, her posture was upright, and her eyes held a wisdom that few noticed. She moved carefully toward the counter with a small basket of items, bread, milk, and some fruit. Lisa glanced at her and rolled her eyes. Ugh, people take forever, she muttered under her breath, loud enough for others to hear. A couple of customers shifted uncomfortably, sensing tension. When Mrs. Evelyn reached the counter, she offered a polite smile. "Good morning, dear. How much for these?" she asked softly. But instead of respect, she was met with hostility. Lisa snapped. "If you can't read the prices, maybe you shouldn't be shopping here. People like you just slow everyone down." Gasps echoed through the store. One man whispered, "That's no way to talk to anyone, especially her." But Lisa ignored the murmurs. When Mrs. Evelyn calmly replied, "There's no need to be rude. Young lady," Lisa lost her temper. With shocking disrespect, she shoved the bag across the counter, knocking an apple onto the floor. It rolled away as silence filled the store. Then, with an air of superiority, Lisa said, "Hurry up and pay. We don't have all day." Everyone froze. The elderly woman bent down slowly to pick up the apple, her hands trembling slightly. People expected her to walk away in shame. But Mrs. Evelyn's silence carried more power than anyone realized. Because she was not just a customer, she was the true owner of the store. And soon, the seller's world would flip upside down. The atmosphere inside the store shifted like a storm cloud had passed through. Customers whispered among themselves, their eyes darting between the cashier and the elderly woman. One younger woman near the counter spoke up. "That's no way to treat her. She's older than you. Show some respect." Lisa smirked, brushing off the comment. "Mind your own business. If she can't handle shopping like everyone else, maybe she should stay home." The words cut like a knife. Mrs. Evelyn didn't respond. Instead, she calmly placed the apple back into her basket and looked Lisa in the eye. Her silence carried a strength that unsettled even the bold cashier. Still, Lisa pressed on, determined to embarrass her. She scoffed and said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "Some people just don't belong in places like this. They make everything harder for the rest of us." Gasps spread through the line. A father holding his child shook his head. "Shameful," he muttered. An older man stepped aside, clearly uncomfortable, but unwilling to intervene. Meanwhile, Mrs. Evelyn stood with quiet grace, though the sting of humiliation was visible in her eyes. She reached into her purse to pull out her wallet, her hands trembling ever so slightly. Lisa, seeing this, mocked her further. See? Can't even keep her hands steady. This is what I mean, slowing down everyone's day. But before Mrs. Evelyn could say a word, a middle-aged man from the back of the line raised his voice. Enough! She hasn't done anything wrong. You're the problem here. For a brief moment, silence returned. Lisa's face flushed with anger, but she shrugged off the criticism. Whatever. She's just another customer. Let's get this over with. The crowd exchanged uneasy glances, torn between speaking up and staying quiet. Nobody yet knew the truth, that the very woman being ridiculed was far more than a customer. She was the foundation of the place they all stood in. And very soon, that truth would come crashing down on Lisa in a way she could never have expected. Mrs. Evelyn remained calm, her quiet presence only fueling Lisa's arrogance. The cashier sighed loudly and tapped her fingers on the counter. Come on already, lady. You're holding up the line. Pay and leave. But Mrs. Evelyn didn't rush. She lifted her eyes, steady and piercing, and said softly, Young lady, do you know who you're speaking to? Lisa chuckled mockingly. Yeah, a slow old woman wasting everyone's time. The words hung heavy in the air. Some customers winced, waiting for the elderly woman to break down or argue back. Instead, Mrs. Evelyn placed her basket firmly on the counter and straightened her shoulders. At that very moment, a man in a sharp suit entered the store. He paused, his eyes immediately falling on Mrs. Evelyn. With visible respect, he hurried over. Mrs. Evelyn, I didn't know you were here today, he said warmly, bowing his head slightly. Gasps rippled through the line. Lisa's smirk faded, confusion flashing across her face. Wait, you know her? She asked. The man turned to Lisa, his expression serious. Know her? She's the one who built this business from the ground up. She's not just a customer. She is the owner of this entire store. Whispers erupted from the crowd. The woman who had earlier defended Mrs. Evelyn placed her hand over her mouth, whispering, I knew she wasn't ordinary. Lisa's face drained of color. The owner, she stammered. Mrs. Evelyn nodded slowly. Yes, this store exists because of years of hard work, sacrifice, and respect for the community. And yet, here I stand, treated as if I am less than human by someone meant to serve with kindness. The store fell silent. Lisa's arrogance crumbled into panic. She looked around desperately, but all she saw were eyes filled with judgment. The truth had been laid bare, and the humiliation she tried to inflict on another now circled back to her. And Mrs. Evelyn wasn't finished yet. The store grew so silent that even the hum of the refrigerators in the back felt loud. Lisa stood frozen, her arrogance melting away under the weight of dozens of eyes. Her hands trembled as she tried to speak. I didn't know. But Mrs. Evelyn raised her hand gently, stopping her mid-sentence. That is the point, dear, she said firmly. You didn't know. And because of that, you believed it was acceptable to insult and demean someone based on how they looked, how old they were, or how long they took. Lisa swallowed hard, her face burning with shame. The crowd leaned in, listening closely as Mrs. Evelyn continued. Respect is not something you give only when you think someone is powerful. Respect is given because every human being deserves it. Today, you judged me as weak and unimportant. But what if I wasn't the owner? Would that make your actions any less wrong? A woman in line whispered, She's right. A man nodded slowly, adding, It shouldn't take money or power to deserve kindness. Lisa's eyes welled with tears. She tried again. Please, I didn't mean... But Mrs. Evelyn's voice grew stronger, commanding the room. Intent does not erase the harm done. The humiliation, the disrespect, the cruelty, they leave scars whether or not you meant it. Lisa lowered her gaze, unable to meet her employer's eyes. The lesson cut deeper than any punishment could. Finally, Mrs. Evelyn turned to the watching customers. This store was built on the belief that everyone deserves dignity. If we forget that, then we lose more than just business. We lose our humanity. The words settled over the room like a heavy truth. Several customers applauded softly. Others nodded in agreement. Lisa stood there, broken by the reality she had created. Her role as the one in control had been shattered, replaced by a mirror reflecting her own disrespect. But what Mrs. Evelyn said next would decide her fate. The silence after Mrs. Evelyn's words lingered like a weight none could ignore. Lisa's face was pale, her arrogance gone, replaced by the sting of shame. The customers, now united in respect for Mrs. Evelyn, waited to see what she would decide. Mrs. Evelyn looked directly at Lisa, her voice steady. "You tried to strip me of dignity, not knowing who I was. But the truth is, I never needed a title or ownership to know my worth. You see, respect should not depend on status. It should come from the heart." Lisa's eyes filled with tears. "Please give me another chance. I swear, I'll never treat anyone this way again." For a long moment, Mrs. Evelyn studied her. The entire store seemed to hold its breath. Then she spoke. "Everyone deserves a second chance, but only if they're willing to truly change. From this moment forward, your actions will show whether you've learned." Lisa nodded quickly, her voice cracking. "I have. I will." The customers, inspired, began to clap. The father holding his child smiled warmly. "That's a lesson for all of us," he said. Another woman added, "This world needs more people like her." Mrs. Evelyn offered a gentle smile. "I don't need applause. What I need is for everyone here to remember this. Kindness costs nothing, but its value is priceless." Lisa lowered her head, whispering, "Thank you for not giving up on me." Mrs. Evelyn simply nodded. Then she picked up her small basket, paid for her groceries, and walked out with grace, leaving behind a silence filled not with tension, but reflection. That day, the customers didn't just witness a confrontation. They witnessed a transformation. And for Lisa, the lesson would echo for the rest of her life. Never underestimate anyone, and never forget the power of respect. Because sometimes the person you least expect to matter turns out to be the one who built everything around you.